beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel, Orlia Speaks Life, where I talk about faith, health, and relationships, and I share with you tips on how you can transform pain into purpose. Now, as you see from the title, today I'll be talking about 7 lessons that I've learned since I've been single for 7 years, and I'm super excited to share this video with you. But before we get into the video, remember to subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Remember to share, comment, like, and click that notification bell so that you can know when I upload other videos. Now, this video is mainly for my single followers. If you're not single, you can always feel free to share this with someone who this might benefit. Now, a question is always posed to me since this season, and that question is, Orlia, why is it that you're still single? And truth be told, there are maybe several reasons as to why, but I believe the main reason is because the Lord has not directed me to go into another season. He pretty much shared with me, or guided me, or directed me to not go into another relationship unless He has directed me, unless that is my husband, which is a completely other video. So we will not go into that. But I realized that quite a few persons are single, and this is a season that is not easy. It is one, depending on how you view it, it can be either detrimental or it can be beneficial. This season is actually a gift from God, and the Bible states, it tells us clearly that there are different seasons. There is a time for everything, and there is a time to be single, and there is also a time to get married. But an important point to note is that it's important for us to learn the lessons that are taught to us in the season, because we're usually being prepared to go into a next season, and when God sees fit, He will definitely grant us that grace if that is the will that He has for our lives. And now that brings me to my first point, which speaks about the importance, and this is my first lesson, the importance of falling in love with Christ, the importance of building an intimate relationship with Christ, and allowing Christ to be your happily ever after. Now, the reason why this is important is because there are quite a few schools of thoughts regarding singleness. Um, if you go on YouTube and you type in singleness or the season of singleness, you'll see a bunch of videos coming up where persons are literally giving you a formula on how to get out of the season of singleness and go into the season of marriage. But I want to share with you these lessons. They're not necessarily formulas, but I'm sure someone is able, or those who are watching is able to garner some insight from what I'm about to share. But it's important for you to build a relationship with God for yourself and allow Him to direct you regarding your posture in this season. Now, there is someone that I follow on YouTube who is called Heather Lindsay, and she talks about singleness. She talks about her journey with singleness, and she advocates for purity in relationships. And a lot of persons follow her because of her story. But I remember she shared a video regarding her going on what she likes to call a man fast for a period of time, and 6 months after she met her husband. And some years after, I I was reading a comment, and a lady stated that she too went on that man fast, and that has been 2 years now, and she has not been married. And because of that, she stated that Heather might be a fraud or she might not be hearing from God. Now, the problem with this is that God might have directed Heather to go on this fast, and he might have graced her with finding her spouse. But did God tell her? Did God tell that other lady to go on that fast? And so it's very important for us to hear from God. It's, yes, we want to hear from other persons who we take as mentors and those who have gone through that season, but sometimes we get distracted by focusing on reading books, focusing on watching videos, focusing on going to singles retreats, focusing on going to singles meeting and joining singles groups and singles club. And we're taking advice from everybody else instead of taking advice from the master, from he who created you, who is Christ. And so I would encourage you to study your Bible and to go into the word so that the Lord can deposit in you the direction that he wants you to go. The reason why I can be so secure in this season is because I know exactly what God told me to do. Though the season is not easy, it's very challenging at times, but there is a confidence that comes with knowing what the Lord told you, knowing what he has asked you to do in this season, and also showing you that after this season is finished, what he has for you, and that will change your mindset regarding singleness. Now, as it pertains to people who I used to follow, I still follow them, but I do not necessarily watch them as often as when I just came in the season, because I believe that I have passed the phase that they're making reference to, and because I know exactly what the Lord has called me to in this season, I really prefer to hear what he has to say. I'm definitely also an advocate for purity in relationship. Definitely an advocate for setting boundaries and all of that, these good stuff that these people talk about. But it's very important for you to have a relationship with Christ so that he can show you the purpose and the reason why you are still in the season. Now I want to go into my second point, the second lesson that I learned, which is to invest in myself. And when I talk about investing in myself, I'm not necessarily only talking about acquiring a degree or going to school. That is definitely one of them and one that I have done. But I talk about investment regarding financially, educational, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And yes, as I stated before, I have watched and read and do all of those good stuff when I just became single, because I needed information and I needed guidance during that time. And so yes, I did partake in some of those stuff. Not that anything is wrong with them, but it's important that we allow God to direct us. But while I invested in myself regarding that area, I also invested in myself psychologically and emotionally. We all have different traits that we want to improve. There are some traits that we have that will be magnified when we're in a relationship or when we get married. Now, a lot of us think that there is going to be suddenly a transformation and we're going to be living happily ever after. But if you talk to any married couple, they will share with you that when you get married, your faults or any challenges that you go into that relationship with will be magnified. And so for me, I recognize the importance of investing in myself and pretty much becoming who I would want God to bless me with. Now, I know a lot of persons say that they want a particular mate. They want somebody who is financially stable, somebody who works out, somebody who is emotionally stable, someone who's educated. But it's important for us to be those things before we can expect those things from someone. And so for me, it was very important for me to deal with some stuff that needed to be dealt with. And I believe that it was important for me to be placed in the season of singleness, because if I had gone into a relationship with some of these traits, some of these issues that I have based on experience in the past, based on past trauma, I maybe wouldn't have been successful in that relationship. So maybe the Lord is calling you to maybe go to counseling. Maybe the Lord is calling you to get an accountability partner, or to get a mentor, or maybe the Lord is calling you to really look at some traits that you have, and if they're not healthy, maybe He wants to direct you to getting some help where that is concerned. Also, the topic of financial investment, it's important for us to be good stewards, not only with our finances, but with our talent, with our testimony, and with our time. And so during this time, we have a lot of time on our hands. We do not have the responsibilities of those who are in a marriage. The Bible definitely talks about how when someone is single, that they can spend more time with Christ, and they can focus on uh, serving others, and also fulfilling their purpose. Well, when I say fulfilling your purpose, you're always fulfilling your purpose, but this is the time to actually discover what your purpose is, and minister for Christ during this time without any distraction. Now, when you get married, even though you're still called to serving others and to minister for Christ, your focus will also need to be on your spouse, on your children, and the responsibilities that comes with that. And so it's very important for us to seek to minister, serve, while we wait for God to bless us, if that is purpose for our lives to go into the season of marriage. Now, my third point is a lesson of forgiveness. The lesson of forgiveness. This is something that I stress a lot, because sometimes we are so bent on unforgiveness, not forgiving ourselves for things that we did, or not forgiving persons who wronged us. And it really takes away from the season, really takes away from the purpose of the season, because you're always looking back at what happened, and you're not able to move forward. For me, this was a challenge for me in the first phase of my season, and the Lord really had to work on me where that is concerned. Now, as it pertains to forgiving myself, this was even more of a challenge, and even forgiving others. And I really had to learn to not to take myself so seriously. Uh, it really showed me that, I will mess up, but at the same time, there is grace, and God has already forgiven me. So it's very important for me to forgive myself. Also, it's important to forgive others, to forgive ourselves, and to forgive others quickly, because it really helps us to move on from the hurt. Forgiveness allows us to release the other person who have wronged us, so that we can definitely move on and continue even to loving that person as Christ would direct us. So definitely, if you're having a challenge with forgiveness, I would implore you to work on that aspect, because without forgiveness, without forgiving yourself or the next person, you will pretty much be paralyzed, and you will not be able to move on to the next phase, or to the next stage that the Lord wants to take you in this current season. Now, loving myself unconditionally is the fourth point that I want to focus on. And I have quite a few things that I wrote here, because this is a very important point, one that speaks of self-love, self-worth. I'm telling you that I had challenges accepting myself for who I am, the authentic me, and for loving myself unconditionally, which kind of talks to or speaks to the point that I made before regarding not taking myself too seriously. being a perfectionist and always wanting to do things right and always wanting things to be perfect. When I started spending time with Christ and He started pouring into me His thoughts for me, or His thoughts of me, and showing me how he sees me, uh it pretty much placed a paradigm shift on my life, because I was able to start loving myself regardless of the mistakes that I made, because we will always make mistakes as we're humans. But I am able to laugh sometimes at the foolishness that I did, and come back and say, regardless of you being messed up in this area, I still love you. And I'm talking to myself. And when I recognize the importance of loving myself unconditionally, I was able to improve my self-worth, and I was able to place a standard for myself. So where this is concerned, in loving myself unconditionally, even in the season of singleness, it allows me um, to discourage any distraction or anyone that is giving me less than my worth. And it's very important, because a lot of times the reason why we continue to be in relationships, or the reason why we do not want to be out of relationships, so we go into relationships after relationships, because we really don't like ourselves. We really don't want to spend time with ourselves. So we put a lot of stuff in that area to distract us, so that we don't necessarily spend time with ourselves. And because of that, it's like we're continuing to open the wound, The wound is not able to heal, because we constantly go back into relationship. We constantly answer that call when that toxic person calls. We constantly allow that toxic person to come over. We constantly go over. We constantly do things that really is toxic, and that really drains us, and that doesn't allow us to live a life of purpose. And so I recognize the importance of loving myself unconditionally, and also improving my self-worth. That definitely allowed me to make better decisions. I spoke in a previous video regarding when I just came in the season. I used to have a lot of male friends, and I used to entertain my friends, talk to them on the phone. I'm single, so nothing is wrong with talking to my friends on the phone, or entertaining different guys just to talk to them on the phone, because you like the attention. But after discovering this unconditional love for myself that the Lord gave me, I am able to make a conscious decision that I will no longer waste time on unconstructive things, or I will not entertain random guys just to talk to them on the phone, or just for attention's sake. But I have filled my time with constructive stuff, so that I don't necessarily have time for those, what I would like to call, foolishness. And it takes growth. It's a process that you go through, and I literally had to make the decision to not have the amount of male friends that I used to have. Now I maybe have just one male friend, and I was naturally drawn to having male friends, maybe because I followed a male and he had a lot of male friends, and so I grew up seeing that. But the Lord showed me that that is something that I had to work on for various reasons, and I've started had some female friends, but not a lot. But now I've been more intentional of having female friends who are able to pour into me, who are able to hold me accountable, who are able to advise me, both single and married, female friends who love God and who has my best interest at heart. And so that is not to say, for each his own, that you cannot have male friends, and that there's a taboo where that is concerned. But I'm just saying, for me, when I discovered my worth and when I started loving myself unconditionally, those desires started to minimize. And the Lord had to show me that, listen, you need to be focused in this season, because there is something specific that I'm preparing you for there is a purpose in this season and you need to be focused, and all of those things are distractions. And so I encourage you, sis, I encourage you, bro, to spend time in the word, spend time feeding on the word so that the Lord can show you the thoughts that he has of you, and so that you can go into that season of loving yourself and improving your self-worth, and you will see that the decisions that you make will reflect the worth that you have placed on yourself. Okay, now this next lesson that I learned, I believe this is what, the sixth lesson, the fifth lesson. My convictions are not everybody's conviction. I'm telling you, when I just became single, I was very radical, and the Lord told me a bunch of stuff and I was excited. He pretty much literally told me some things that I shouldn't do. That for some people it might seem a bit radical. And I remember when I go to different meetings, because I used to attend quite a few single meetings, and even if there's a discussion with friends, I would just be sharing my convictions, and I recognize that a lot of persons would take offense to the convictions that I have, because that's not necessarily their conviction, which is totally fine. But I remember I was in New York, and a very wise lady came to me. We were having the same discussion with a friend. Three of us were there talking, and I was sharing my convictions, and she was sharing her story with me, where she said that she was single, and she was attending a very small church with a lot of elderly persons. No younger folks were there, and she said persons were encouraging her to go to more liberal and more popular churches so that she would be able to find her husband. She said she eventually listened to her friends and she went to that church, and she was not comfortable going to those churches, and so she went back to her little church in the country. And she said the Lord had directed her that she should stay in the church and that she should serve in that church. And she said, actually, who she's married to now was actually someone who came as a guest speaker to speak at that church. And she was saying to me that people will have different things to say, but sometimes the Lord gives you a specific directive. It doesn't mean that you have to share those convictions or share what the Lord has given you, because if someone doesn't understand where you're coming from, or they're not at that level that you are, they might become offended. And so that was a very important lesson for me. And she went further to say to me that I should be careful regarding how and who I share my convictions with. And I've learned over the years too that maybe the Lord is calling me to a particular path. He's not necessarily calling other persons to that particular path, because he has a particular purpose for everyone. He has a calling for me in this particular season, and so he might ask me to do specific stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else needs to do that. It's not a blueprint, it's not a set rule. And so again, I stress that you go to God, spend time with him, and ask him, what is it that you want to teach me in this season? What is it that you need me to work on? Do not follow the masses regarding what they're doing and the formulas that they're giving regarding how you can get out of this season, because really and truly, you could do those formulas from now until eternity. You will not get out of this season until the Lord wants you to. And that's just the bottom line, period. So I encourage you to just focus on what you are called to do currently, and the Lord will definitely grace you according to his will. Now, the sixth lesson that I learned is the importance of being responsible with my healing. And when I talk about being responsible with healing, it's very important for us to listen to the directives that the Lord is giving us. And it's very important for us to seek help if we need that help, which I briefly touched on in previous lessons that I learned. But I realized that I had to take responsibility for decisions that I made, responsibilities for mistakes that I made, and also responsibilities for how far the Lord has taken me from. As you heard previously, that I've been single for a long time, and I am blown away at where God has brought me from and where I am now. You know, that I would, I did not imagine that I would be the person that I am today just by being obedient to Christ. When I just became single, I wanted to go in relationships. There were persons pursuing me, and I go to God and I tell him that this person is interested in me. I really like this person, and God would consent everybody. God says no, and I'm telling you, God is faithful regarding me in saying no. And I've learned to accept those no's because I've realized that there are actually blessings in those no's. For some of those persons, the Lord showed me why, for some, He didn't. But I have the faith to know that He's preparing me for a particular purpose, and I have to trust Him where that is concerned. Now, regarding being responsible, there are different boundaries that I have to place on my life. I was just thinking the other day how currently I am content with my life simply because my life is stress free and drama free, and I had to learn that lesson to protect my space, to protect the people that I entertain, to be mindful of the persons that I entertain in my circle, and to really live a life where I am very deliberate with who I bring in my circle and in my space. And that took some time, but I'm telling you that it really makes a world of difference. And as I stated before, I when it comes down to protecting my space, guarding my heart, I'm very um, deliberate where that is concerned, and it has changed my life completely. And so, as I stated before, the Lord has directed me to do specific stuff like do not be on the phone talking to a guy for hours without knowing the purpose of this conversation. For me, if someone inbox me and they're just constantly inboxing me and saying hi or want to start a conversation, I really don't have the time to waste, and I'm going to ask him, "What's the purpose of you contacting me?" For me, that's me guarding my heart, because I do not want to waste time. I do not have the time to waste, and I'm very, when it comes on to my space and guarding my heart, I'm very deliberate currently where that is concerned. And I was just looking back on the past, and how I used to entertain different randoms to just talk on the phone, um, just for that attention. But right now, I fill my life with things that will enable me to not be distracted. Try to live a life of purpose, and one that is focused on what it is that the Lord is calling me to do in this current season, and how I take responsibility of my healing and how far God has brought me from. Because in the name of Jesus, we're not going back, we're only moving forward. And in order to continue moving forward, we have to be responsible with our healing. So maybe the Lord is asking you to place some boundaries over your life. Who are your friends? Who are you entertaining? What are you watching? Where are you going? Um, it's important for you to ensure that you are guarding your heart so that you do not go back to the foolishness that you used to do in the past. Which brings me to my next point, which is my last point. Yes, point number 7. Trust the process. Marriage is not the end goal. Let me say that again. Trust the process. Marriage is not the end goal. Our end goal is actually heaven and eternity. And believe me, this took some time for me to say, God, you are enough. And it's fine if you have not called me to a life of marriage, but you have called me to execute your purpose in the season of singleness. And though none of it, well, there are some persons who were called and they know they're called, so they have no desire to go in relationships. But for the persons who have desire, quite a few persons teach that if you have that desire, it means that God is calling you to be in a relationship or calling you to marriage, but that might not necessarily be the case. And so we have to ask God this first question: is it your will for me to get married? Again, ask God this question before you start praying for Tam, Dick, and Harry, or Sue, Mary, and Jane. Ask God if it is His will for you to get married. And another question is, what do you want me to do in this season? What are some areas that I need to work on in this current season? Because what if God has not called you to get married? What will be the end result? We need to focus on the fact that the end goal is really our main purpose here on earth is um, to serve God and to proclaim the gospel, and the end goal is really heaven. But a lot of us get distracted, and because of that distraction, we start taking singleness or marriage as an idol. And we all know that God is a jealous God. And so, if God sees that I can't be submitted to Him in my singleness, I won't be able to submit to my husband. If God sees that I am not spending time with Him and I'm not delving in His Word, praying, seeking His face daily, then that what will happen when I go in a relationship and I have other responsibilities and other distractions, it would mean that I'm not ready to go into the season of marriage, because the Lord sees that I'm single and I'm having challenges with these things. It pretty much means that I have not placed Him as a number one priority in my life. And so I want to implore you that it's important for you to recognize that even though you're in the season, even though it's a difficult season, it's important for you to recognize that marriage is not the end goal, and Christ wants you to recognize that God is enough. God is everything that we can ever ask for and more. And though that is for some of us a hard pill to swallow, as we like to say, but it is really true. And I would implore you to focus on what your purpose is in the season. What has God called you to do? Yes, it's important for you to listen to others' advice, but what is God advising you? What's His advice to you regarding this season? And I would implore you to sit with God and spend some time in His Word, and first ask Him if it's His will for you to get married. If He tells you yes, then ask Him, what is it that you want me to do in this season? But remember, do not do these things because you want the blessing of marriage, because God knows your heart, and He knows that you might be doing this just for the benefit, but do it because you love Christ and you want to be co-laborers with Him. Remember that for those who are married, it's nothing good that they have done in order to be in that phase of their life, but it's only because of God's grace. There is really nothing that you can do that will prevent God from granting you that blessing, as long as you seek His face But he's really imploring you right now that you should be focused on what he has called you to do, and if it's his will, he will grant you the grace to be married. It doesn't matter what you do, where you go, who you seek. I believe that God knows the end from the beginning, and you if you should get married 10 years from now, it's 10 years from now you're getting married. You can't force the process. So don't force the process, but trust the process. Okay, I hope this was beneficial for someone who is in the season and who might be struggling in this season. Remember that God is doing a work in you currently in this season, and He wants to show you the great things that He has in store for you, even in this season. So I pray that you will be faithful and that you will seek his face regarding what you're supposed to do. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as I always say when I end my videos, that every good and perfect gift comes from God, and God will make all things beautiful in its time. Trust the process. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and continue to be blessed. And comment down below any challenges that you're having regarding your current season of singleness, and also share if there are any other topics that you would like me to talk on. Thank you so much, guys, and be blessed. Bye.